Let's take a look at Chapter 11 in Classroom in a Book for Photoshop. I'm going to take a look here at the actual files that are in Lesson 11. We can see a JPEG, a movie file, another JPEG, an MP4, and then a Photoshop file, and then a MP3. So what we're going to be creating is a video in Photoshop. I'm going to go on and play the video for you. This is saved in Photoshop, so you can see how long it takes to open these up. There's nothing small about video production, so take a look at, we also have to set this up so that we can have motion. In Photoshop, when you're dealing with films, you have to have motion, and now I can actually hit play and see what's going on here. Okay, so you could see what that was on a timeline here. This is a timeline. I'm going to expand it a little bit so you can start to see a little bit more about what I see here. So you can actually save a movie file. Here's our animation of Beach Day moving across, and then a little slow-mo followed by a sepia toning, a panning, again a little bit of motion here of the sky jumping. That's a still photo, and then a zooming out, and then a dipping to black. And then this green down here, that's actually the audio. So that's the MP3 file. So I'm going to close that because I really don't want that taking up space as we start to compose this. All right, so taking a look at Photoshop, when you're about to do this, we're going to create a new document. And when we create something new and we're creating a film, we actually have to go to this area here called Film and Video. I'm going to click on that. When I click on this, I'm seeing a lot of really cool presets, and a lot of these guys are free. So by all means, experiment. They're wonderful, wonderful little templates, like video mock-ups, and you can apply your content to these. But we are going to be creating this from scratch. So let me real briefly kind of talk about these numbers. In video, you have high definition, and 1080p, that stands for pixels, is actually the high definition. We're going to be working in 720, which is a lower resolution, which will render faster. You don't have as many pixels, but in this situation, that is fine. Know that all video sees in 72 pixels per inch because it is on a monitor or a screen. So our resolution won't go above 72 pixels per inch. But there's just so many cool options. I'm just going to click this and you can see, I mean, here's 4K, here's 8K. You know, if you're working in Europe, you'll see PAL instead of the NTSC. These are just ways of recording information for video production. That's a whole nother class, but just understand that the higher the number, the more pixels are going to be in that actual film. So we're going to go for the lowest one that we can create right here, and that will be the 72 or 720 pixels. And I'm just going to take a look here. You'll see that it's 72 resolution. It's definitely on a landscape mode, white background, and so let's create. When I do that, you'll see it looks a little different. You actually, what's important with video is this timeline. I need to actually create a video timeline in Photoshop. And so we have some very minimal controls. This is not like Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or an Avid machine. This software is just very remedial. It just gets the job done, but it does pretty good. So you're not going to have all the added features of a real dedicated video editing software. but we can make a video with no problems here. So I'm going to go on and click this create video timeline. If for some reason you ever open it up and you don't see that, you have to go to the workspace. Remember again that there are different presets that Photoshop's giving you that says, hey, you know, if you're going to be painting or photography, well, we're in motion today and it's already on that, so I don't have to do that. But make sure you have the motion timeline. And we are ready to dump some media and assets, and we call them assets, whether it's music or you know, a graphic or a logo or the actual you know, a video or a photo. It's all considered assets. So I'm going to say create a video timeline, and right off the bat it just gives us white. I can actually hit the space bar or I can hit the play, and you'll see that it just kind of goes through here, and that's all there is just white. We're going to end up deleting that at some point. All right, super. So how do you get media into the timeline? It's a very good question. You actually move here and you say, hey, I need to add some media. This could also say add assets. So I am going to go grab some assets. I'm going to go to my desktop, into my somewhere's lessons, right? Photoshop, lesson 11. Right, and we are looking at a whole bunch of things here. I'm going to actually select all of these, and I'm going to tell them to open. And you'll see that it went on and dumped all these guys in. They are in my timeline now. We have some editing to do. We need to get rid of that. Right, these are a little too long. We're going to make them all much shorter. I'm not going to play through the whole thing, but you can kind of see by moving the timeline, all the assets are there. We just need to adjust them in such a way that, you know, it's a much smaller, more concise. We got to get rid of the natural sound, they call it nat sound, that is on some of these clips. Okay, so now that we have our assets on the timeline here, and they call it group one, often I will call this a track one. If you've ever done video production, we refer to track one, maybe track two, track three, and then audio one, audio two, video two, things like that. It's just a way of knowing what track you're on. So I mentioned that there's white in front. I'm just going to click on that and hit the delete key, because I don't even need that white. It's just sort of a place setter. So I'm going to take that out. I do not need it. I can make the timeline bigger or smaller by hitting the little mountains here. All right, so right off the bat, I'm just going to make everything a bit smaller. I am going to make the duration around, I don't know, around 3 seconds. I want everything on this timeline to be much smaller. And you do that by clicking on it. And if I look up at that window, I can see the duration. I'm getting close to 3 now, right? I'm going to make my timeline a little smaller. I can click here and reduce see the duration up in the top right frame here. I'm going to reduce this down to about 3 seconds again. So everything's, you know, this is some footage. It's really good practice to get more footage here. I can see the duration in the bottom where it says duration. It's really good to always have a little bit of extra film. I highly encourage that when you're recording anything. Give yourself a little bit of leadway, a little bit of front, and a little bit of back. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is try to get this image here. It's zoomed in too far. That's because the pixels in this photo don't match the 720 that we created back when we first made this document. So I need to get this image to fit. To do that, I'm going to click on the little arrow that's inside the square. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to go pan and zoom, make sure that I have resize to fit canvas selected, and click out of the timeline. When I do that, you can see that it has automatically put this into a position where it's good to go. I don't want the zoom, so I'm going to actually go back in. This is something I wish Photoshop would correct, but it would actually, I don't want the motion, so I'm going to go no motion. So I had it to correct and fit into it. Then I had to go back in and tell it not to move. All right, so this next image here, let's take a look at this. There's a couple things I'm going to do. I am actually going to slow it down, right? The duration is like about 3 seconds. It's at 100% right now. I'm going to slow this down, and I'm also going to go into the audio, and I'm going to mute the audio because I don't want to hear the boat. So when I do that, though, so let's take a look at what we did. Here we have no audio, and it was able to slow down. But in slowing it down, often you will make the duration of the clip a little longer. It's not that much longer here, so I'm comfortable with that, around 3 seconds again. I'm not going to do much with that. But that's something you'll have to consider. When you slow down a clip, you're actually... Let's take a look at this third clip. In this clip, we actually want to change the color grading. We do not want this to be color anymore. We actually want it to be a black and white. So just like you have layers in Photoshop when we're working with an image, we can go straight over here to our adjustment, right? And we can change this to a black and white in the adjustment properties panel. And I am going to give this a tint of a sepia tone, and that is exactly how we apply like a sepia toning to an image in Photoshop while creating video, and that would be the way we do it with any photo. Let's take a look real quick at what's going on in the layers, and then we'll continue everything. If I take a look at my layers, you'll see that all of your content is right here. Like right now, what I did was I actually created an adjustment layer for the picture with the dog running on the beach. So it's an adjustment layer just like you would use in any type of photoshopping. But everything that we're doing here on the timeline